welcome to the first of our Hopefield sessions, where we have conversations on life and well-being that enable you to thrive. My name is Jodine and I am one of the Associate Pastors of Gymea Baptist Church, and this resource is made in partnership with the team at Hopefield to support our faith community. In the book of Ecclesiastes, it says there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. And well, we are definitely going through a distinct time and season in our human history as we all live through a global pandemic. We're all experiencing change in many unprecedented ways, and one of the outcomes of change can be stress and anxiety. So we'll be exploring that today and also look at what are the invitations and possibilities that change offers to us. And joining me today is Robert Boardman, who is the Clinical Director for Hopefield and a practicing psychologist who has worked in this field for over 25 years. And also Linda Salem, who's a clinical psychologist who focuses on working with children and families and has over 30 years of experience. So it's great to have you both here. Rob, can I start with you? COVID-19, challenging time. What have been your challenges and your opportunities?
Yeah, thanks, Jodine. It has been a tough time. And I guess things are just different. Lots of things are different, whether it's going to the shops, and I like going to shops at night time, and now they shut at 10 o'clock. They're the little inconveniences that we can get used to. Some of the things that really have been a challenge, a lot of our work now we're doing remotely, so we'll be doing sessions like actually on various mediums, and I find that difficult. I'm the kind of guy that likes to use the whiteboard and a little bit dynamic and like to read people, and so just to do my job is really quite difficult to do it remotely. We've got our family, which everyone's around just that little bit more, trying to homeschool, and just so many different changes. Some of the things that I have noticed, though, and everyone else has seen this, is there's just so many more people out on the street. We go down now and there's just people to play with. Like, we'll go out in the bush and normally I like to mountain bike ride, you'll be out there and you might see 3 or 4 people, and now you just see groups of them together.
Suburbs.
Yeah, everyone's just out there. I don't know, Grace Point, let's go.
Yeah.
It's everyone's out there. So there's some good things happening too.
Yeah. They've said that there's never been a better health kind of campaign than saying you can only go out and exercise and that's the only reason people should be out, and they're out there doing it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I did have a client, and it took us, I don't know how long, she was trying to find some of those little dumbbells, couldn't find them.
Yeah.
All the gym equipment's gone.
Yeah.
So people are getting healthy. It's brilliant.
Yeah. And Linda, what does this season look like for you? What's been the opportunities and the challenges?
Well, I think the main opportunity for me has been to really develop some micro skills with technology. I'm of an era that, technology isn't my thing. But, I really thank God that it's been a tremendous growth period for me personally, and I think it's, benefiting others as well. And I suppose one of the biggest challenges you mentioned is just doing something like this, actually. Yeah. I'm not a terribly upfront person, but I do see the way forward with education and practice is very much this sort of media presentation, and it is reaching people, reaching people in a way that I'd never anticipated or really fully understood until now.
Isn't that interesting? So not only has your biggest challenge being obviously getting used to technology, it's now one of your greatest opportunities.
Absolutely, and that's I think one of the main reasons we wanted to share today our experiences together in psychology and psychology practice, is that you've got this almost oxymoron, this sort of
dichotomy.
Dichotomy, a balance between some things that you fear, but then they turn into absolute opportunities, and it's a tremendous time of growth personally and professionally as well.
Absolutely. So let's get into it. So Rob, can you give us an overview or a framework of what is stress and anxiety?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, and it does mean different things to different people. Everyone can say, oh, I'm really stressed at the moment, and that's probably pretty normal. I guess when we start to worry, it gets a little bit different, and it starts to affect the way I function. It starts to affect my hobbies that I normally enjoy, those pleasurable activities, that kind of thing. Connections with people I might start to withdraw. And effectively, it just means that I'm responding in a way that's almost disproportionate to what I see in front of me. I'm getting more aroused than I should be. I'm getting more worried. My thoughts are racing more than they should. Whether it's preparation for today or whether it's just we've got something to do, it's normal to think about those things. When we get to the point where it starts to take over and it starts to intrude, then I think that's what we say is unhelpful stress. It's starting to get onto that point where the anxiety is actually something that we need to address as opposed to just see it as part of normal human functioning.
So what I'm hearing is that it affects your quality of life.
Yeah, and the way we actually do life. So the way I do the things that I normally do that I enjoy. Absolutely.
Okay. So to some degree, I guess worry and stress can be part of everyone's life. We've got to have a bit of a handle on what regular life looks like for us and what's healthy and functioning, or maybe in our window of tolerance for ourselves, because that could vary between different people.
Yep.
How do you get a gauge on what you used to be like as opposed to now? How can you say racing thoughts? I guess it's a matter of doing a bit of a stock take on your life. And
yeah, it can be. It
Yeah.
can be. One of the key things in most activities, though, most elements of life is to be connected to others.
Yeah.
And often they might be the ones that notice something in you before you notice it yourself.
So true.
And so whether it's just, oh, are you going okay from a friend, or what are you getting so cranky at me for? Whether it's that kind of thing or whether it's just every once in a while taking stock, like you said. And so, for example, in the middle of the crisis that we're currently in, everyone's taking stock, whether it's from a vocation or workplace perspective, whether it's what my family does. I know there's a whole bunch of people have said, I'm looking at my diary and I'm no longer going to drive my kids Monday afternoon, Tuesday afternoon to practice. Let's hang out as a family. So a crisis actually does cause us to take stock. The challenges we find is when I'm not in tune with where I'm at. So there's a disconnect between my thoughts and the reality. So therefore, I think I'm going okay, but I'm actually falling apart and can't see it. Or I kind of think I'm falling apart, but I don't have a clue what to do about it, and I just hide from it.
Yeah. And it can be a challenging thing because I guess this came on just all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And it may not be until 5, 6, several weeks down the track that you realise this isn't working for me and I've got to do something about it. And I guess everyone's timing and their, sensitivity to when that happens is going to be different, but that's okay. If you're getting that sense of like things are not helpful or serving you, maybe it's time to do something about it now.
Yeah.
Lynn, did you have anything else to add to that? What is stress and anxiety?
I like the way Rob and you sort of positioning it between changes and demands and differences, some unexpected, and taking stock.
Yeah.
My word for taking stock is, I suppose, what really what it means to me is to actually stop and think.
Yeah.
That's good.
And to reflect, meaning to think about what you're thinking.
Yes.
And that's a really quite a higher order way of thinking.
Yeah.
In real psychology terms.
Yeah.
But it's a tremendous time at the moment in this season to actually think about your thinking and reflect on it, spend time in that so that you can actually turn some of the negative stress, which is what I hear some of the impact is, into positive stress, because we all do need some stress to survive, and there's been a lot of focus on I think the negative impact of the changes, but there's also some very good things that are coming out of it, and one of them is to actually turn things round. And we can turn things round, things that we've never been able to do, and that's what my observation is with families. The biggest cry for families that I see in my office is, I don't have enough time with my kids. I don't have enough time. Well, now you have a lot of time, and we've had a lot of time, and it's been a delight to see families out together. And yes, the crowded suburbs in the national park, but But I look at that, and it being a bit of an observer, I look at that and I think, this is good. This is good to see people spending time with each other, families spending time with each other and using that time. But think about where to go from here. You can capture those moments, you can keep those moments when we move into the next phase or stage of all these changes. It's imperative that we take stock.
It's good.
Yeah.
So can I just reflect back what I heard you say was that stress is a bit of a motivator that can be used in a positive and helpful way.
Absolutely.
And I think often we can see it as stress is bad, not good. And when we're in it, we then turn into a kind of downward spiral because it's, I guess, seen as something that we just want to stop, get rid of, and not maybe use for the emotional energy value that it's going to bring us.
Yes, absolutely. I think we've just got an understanding, and it's come over time. The word stress actually means something bad, and we need to do away with stress.
Is there another word we could use instead of stress? Pressure?
I think we're trying to put it in the context of change almost.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I think change, it opens our perspective or opens our thinking to being creative and all the possibilities.
Yeah.
When you think about something as stressful, it can just close down and narrow your focus.
Yeah.
And you just, what you were saying the other day, and where your focus is.
Yeah, what
is
you
what
focus
grows.
on grows.
Yeah, what
where
you
focus,
on.
that's where you'll go.
Yeah, absolutely. So can I ask, you obviously work with children and families.
Yes.
And I think we want to look at this from a real lifespan, intergenerational point of view, because everyone's going to experience it differently. And at some point, we're all going to be in the other generation's shoes. So can you tell us, what are young people experiencing right now during this global pandemic?
Yeah, young people as in adolescents or young adults?
Yeah.
Okay. I think my experience with young people at the moment is their main source of stress, I suppose, in this time is not being able to be really face-to-face with friends. I mean, the peer group and the social group for young people is very strong.
Yeah.
Stronger, I think, than it's a very strong
period of time
and a period of life. That's where they're still identifying. Their identity is developing.
Yeah.
They identify with others. They're making choices about what they value and what they can discard. And there's only so much you can gauge through a two-dimensional process, or through Facebook or text or whatever the current way of communicating with young. So my experience, young people are coming into my office and they're just, they're on Facebook, they're in contact, but they're really missing that close factor, that intimacy
I
level,
guess humans are wired for connection, aren't they? And it's interesting because we would assume young people are digital natives, and it's like, knock yourselves out. You of all the people that could flourish and thrive, you would think it is our younger generation. But when you put it in perspective of a life formation journey, of course they need their people, or you need your village around you at all seasons of life, but especially when you're forming.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that they are digital natives is actually so beneficial to the rest of the people in the household.
Seriously, if there's ever any technology broken, like, where's that young person?
I know, and absolutely. And in my experience, they've just been invaluable. You can just ring up someone and say, "What? How do I fix this?" And they've got it, and it gives them. I mean, I think they've got a great sense of significance through it.
Absolutely,
and for the way forward, because they're really able to navigate these waters, technology-wise. But I think missing really the strong emotional connections that young people still need, and strongly need at this time.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So we're hearing that this is an unprecedented event, and I guess one of the phrases that's been thrown around is that life will never be the same once this is over, because it's possibly the most, I guess, collective global change that we've experienced in our lifetimes. Maybe some older generations have experienced a war, but this one, I guess we're getting to see it through media, real time, immediately. We're experiencing this together. So what strategies can we embrace as we move towards the future, towards the new normal? Rob, can you give us some insights on that?
Yeah, I think just to build on what Linda was saying, there's a sense in which this current crisis, in a sense, actually becomes a choice point for us. So we go from being automatic to manual. We go from being sort of, unconsciously incompetent to actually making an assessment. What do I want in my life? What are my values, and are they still congruent with the way it's running?
Yeah.
And so there's a sense in which we can all say, do I want to spend more time with my family? Do I want to spend more time at work? Whatever your choices are, now is the time to actually make that. And so the new normal basically means I have a chance to be on purpose about what I become, about what I have in my life. So if I value God, then I'm going to spend more time reading the Bible. I'm going to spend more time connecting. And so some people I know have been actually spending so much more time in the Word right now, and I'm just hearing it from my friends. It's like, this is amazing. It's just opening up to me. I rode my bike here this morning. I ride every day, and I was listening to Philippians, and it's an amazing book. It takes you 15 minutes to hear the whole thing. It's about unity, and he's saying it's about contentment, regardless of your circumstances. God, who began a good work in you, is going to keep it going. And I think that perspective helps us, coming back to your question, how do I manage the change and how do I adapt to something new? One of the key principles that's really important for us all is having that sense of flexibility, psychological flexibility almost. And so what that means in part is actually looking at something and judging it on its merits. Now, I know that sounds a little bit silly, but often people take what's worked in the past and try and do that to the new situation.
Because it's easier, it's comfortable, it's what we know.
That's what I've done.
Yeah.
But typically what happens is when it doesn't work, I feel like, wow, my resources aren't capable, competent enough to manage this stress. So the stressor is bigger than my resources.
Yeah.
And that's when I start to feel overwhelmed and out of control.
Yeah.
The key when you talk to someone like us, when you talk to your friends, when you actually get from, automatic to manual, is actually being purposeful about what do I want to do? What are my resources? And so for some people, it might be as simple as, all right, this thing's really stressing me. I'm going to take some time and think about it clearly, articulate it, externalize it, as opposed to let it swirl around in my head. For other people, it could be, I need to get to someone and just make sure I'm in a relationship where they can speak into me and I can help them. One of the things that we know for people when they're struggling is if I help someone else, I'm the person struggling and I help someone else, that makes me feel better. So we can't just withdraw. Actually helping others is a really important thing.
Actually, that's, the big take-home message that we've been seeing on our billboards and on our buses is stay home, stay safe, save lives. And I thought that's actually a fantastic message about saving lives. That
It's framed in a community perspective.
Thinking and as we go into the new norm, it's incredible to say it, but we had to be reminded that we actually need to care for others,
To be others focused.
to be other focused,
Yeah.
and once you become more other focused, you do have a reduction in stress and demand.
So true, because you're part of a bigger story.
Yes, part of a bigger story, and takes the focus on self. And I think we can be overly focused on self in our society, and it's a real struggle with some of the families that I see to encourage them to have their children or young people engage in helping others. Prior to this pandemic, that seemed to be a real, not really necessarily in their value system. Families want to do everything for their children.
I guess it's easier to get it done in the time that you have, don't you?
Partly that, but there's also, yes, it can be easier. Actually, yes, probably it is much more efficient.
Yes.
In a very, very busy
yeah.
So now is the time to encourage others. While there's big messages everywhere, we need to really think about doing something for someone else. And that's the, I think that's where the key to growth is, and really the path of healing.
Yeah.
And at this, things aren't ever going to be the same. One of the things I've delighted in listening to the families that I've been working in is most people that I've been talking to have taken up a new skill or learnt something new in this time. They didn't have time before, they have time now.
Yep, that's good.
And then to hold on to that, so to keep learning new things, but giving yourself the space to do it. And I think keeping that balance is very healthy.
And it is so interesting because this disruption has actually forced us to the fact that we have to keep learning as humans. We are whole life learners. It doesn't stop at, I guess it's to some degree an illusion that things just stay the same. It's just kind of ripped the rug out from under us all to go, you got to keep moving and changing and innovating and growing and being in connection with yourself as well.
Yeah, and one of the things that we often talk about in our sessions with clients is it's the difference between a fixed and a growth mindset. And so a growth mindset, I'll give you an example. A fixed mindset is I need to get above 90% in my exam. It's that kind of very specific outcome focus, whereas a growth mindset is I'm going to do my best and I'm going to learn from the things that I don't get right. If we're playing a game one-on-one and you're better than me, but I try my best, why should I be upset if I tried my best? But a fixed mindset tells me I needed to win. And so what we're trying to do is just build that concept of, like you say, lifelong learners. It's about me getting to the next step. And then, like Linda's saying, me helping others get to that next step. Because when we build that sense of, almost agency in others, it actually helps our self-esteem as well.
Interesting, the fixed mindset and the growth mindset mentality, because I think how someone is fixed versus how someone has a growing mindset. I love to learn. It's very complex to understand why someone ends up being more fixed than the others. It's very embedded in our society and in our culture, in different cultural, what you're born with and your
personality, your cultural environment, your social environment.
Yeah, and that's often a question I get. I have to sort of sift through with families a lot, like, my child is always going to be stubborn. My child is always going to be this. My child's always going to be a perfectionist.
Yep.
My child, and it's saying, listen to yourself. Listen to what message you're giving your child.
Yeah.
You want them to be different. If you behave like they can be different and express that hope into the child, they are likely to come along. And much more likely than this sort of fixed mentality.
What we found is, well, especially when people are under stress, they do tend to have what we call a negativity bias. And so those mind traps that Linda's talking about, whether it's that generalisation or all or nothing kind of thinking, if I'm not going well, oh no, everything's always going to be like this, or this is terrible and I'll never be able to change it, or one result then gets taken into everything and generalised. And so what we're really trying to encourage people and everyone out there is just basically to see things for as they are. Look at what's in front of you. Be present. You might have heard the concept of mindfulness, and it is interesting. For those of you that have already been to counselling, you've probably come across these kind of things. But basically what we're trying to do is help people see what's in front of them, not with the perceived or the perceptions that are going on in their head. Yeah. What do you reckon?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I don't know if it's too much for someone to, particularly to understand all of this. But what we're saying here is that what directs our response to demands and change is fairly much a sort of a voice in our head that's been somewhat created through our upbringing and through what society says.
It's like a permanent narrator in your head, isn't it? Narrating
like
the movie.
That. There's this little voice. I was actually thinking about the five or six voices I've got in my head at any one time.
And my voice would be one of them?
Your voice is definitely one of them. Yes, it's a good voice. Some voices are good. But you're being aware, that's the reflective process as well, and that's what mindful thinking is think about your thinking, think about what's actually directing, guiding your path and your choices, it does take more time and to reflect and then to make a decision about how you'd like to be and match that with what the truth is. And as Christians, we have the Word of God to really guide our thinking and with the help of the Holy Spirit. So, but we need to take the time and honour that time. And I believe God's given us an amazing, graceful, gracious time at the moment.
Yeah.
And so yes, that good. Negative bias is that sort of voice in your head. It directs you. Capture it. Discard it if it's false.
Notice it and let it go.
Let it go. Learn to let go, because it's not all truth.
And that's a daily practice, isn't it?
Oh, it's moment by moment.
Moment.
If you can
it's
actually
taking captive your thoughts, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. So it is moment by moment, and we can't sort of sit on a couch and just reflect or belly gaze. And it's not exactly. That's not what I'm talking about. But it's about one step at a time, one process at a time, or thought at a time.
Being purposeful, not getting overwhelmed, and just focusing on the one thing that you need to.
Yeah. That's great.
So again, in my experience with families, you get over one hurdle and they're very quick to get onto the next.
Yeah.
And so, I put the sort of brakes on. I'm sort of driving. If I'm in a driver's seat, you're putting the brakes on or getting them to slow down and say, stay with this for a while.
Yep.
Let it sink. Let it take legs.
Because often we don't like feeling uncomfortable.
No. And that's what anxiety is. A lot of the time it's this raised conscious
arousal,
awareness of feeling uncomfortable. But often the perception that we place on that feeling is this is something we need to run away from to bring the that discomfort down. And so that avoidance, which is often characterised with anxiety, builds the anxiety. It doesn't actually...
Yeah, we never get
in
to
the
the
long
point
run
where we get
reduce
used to it, habituate to it.
No,
so if
we
I
need to
feel
get
I'm
used
getting
to it.
anxious, I avoid that situation. I never actually go through it and then start to kind of normalise, habituate to it. So whether it's public speaking or whether it's, feeling stressed about work or whatever whatever it is, there's a line that often, we don't quite say it as bluntly as this, but it's almost feel the fear, feel the stress, but do it anyway. Just keep with it. You actually sit with it and move through it. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that if I'm looking for work, then I just sit there and go, wow, this worst day of my life. There's boundaries to that. And sometimes when we have these negative emotions that are a little bit too strong, it's not good to contemplate on them. And so that's where sometimes having that external, like Linda says, I work with families and we'll put the brakes on. And so someone that guides us through that process can often be helpful.
So a lot of great, insights and key skills that people can pick up. And I guess a lot of these are really helpful, through all the life stages, and especially, for those that are in a, independent situation, independent living from anywhere from the 20s to 50s. I'm just thinking, talking about having a choice point and being able to rewrite your narrative, I think we should be calling this a global growth demic instead of a pandemic. This is actually the greatest opportunity for us to actually grow. And it's a divine invitation that we feel our body giving us these messages and rearing up with anxiety to say, hey, something may need to be to change. And if we do that with compassion and kindness and move through that in a gracious way, we've actually got a lot of opportunity and possibility there.
It's interesting. I know you're about to ask a question in a second, but something that I've been kind of getting a picture of lately is God is a God of growth. First thing he said, Adam and Eve, be fruitful and multiply. Adam, your descendant, Abraham, your descendants are going to be like the sand. The parable of the talents and the miners, he was happy with those that grew. And if you just kept your own little thing, your own little patch, you dug and you hit it, it wasn't what God wants. I think God wants us to be big and expansive and, wholehearted in the things that we do. Yeah.
So, obviously, this impacts all the generations. How does it look for, the seniors in our community? What are the things that they're going to be experiencing, and how can they move through this time, Rob?
Well, I thought you were going to ask the senior on the...
I'm senior.
No, she thought she'd
and
give
I'm
you
proud of
a growth opportunity.
I'm proud of it.
You're not. I guess part of... it's not too dissimilar to what Linda was saying about young people. We all need connections. And often if I don't have the capacity to get out, particularly because people have said I'm vulnerable because I'm of a certain demographic, then I can't get out and make those connections. And the seniors really do fall into that.
Yeah.
And so it's very difficult to feel connected to people. And I think we're, I don't know how many weeks in, 6, 8 weeks in, and we're getting a little bit of Zoom fatigue. We're getting a bit of, I don't know, doing it online by distance fatigue almost. And so the seniors, particularly who aren't the natives, are finding that a little bit trickier. And so part of the thing is, again, to be purposeful. Where do I find my joy? And actually sit down and plan it. I like cooking. Cook for your neighbours. I know we heard that at our team meeting last night at GBC. There's people that are just cooking for their neighbours and loving it. Where do I find my joy? Pottering around the house, gardening, doing my hobbies, dancing in the shower. Well, maybe if you're a senior, as long as you've got a rail, you'll be fine. But it's about being purposeful, about placing those things in my life that I want to do. And so at this time when I'm feeling stressed, a large important part of that is for seniors to be connected. But it's also, like we said before, everyone needs to feel like they're serving and doing something of importance. One of the key things that some researchers found out is there's a couple of really important milestones or foundations of life satisfaction. One of them is meaning and purpose, and the other is a sense of accomplishment. And so, if I'm sitting at home a little bit isolated, I can feel like, what's the point? I can feel like I'm actually not achieving anything. So I would encourage you, if you are in that position, to take stock. And be purposeful about what it is that I can do. And if you're stuck, ask your friends. If you're stuck, maybe seek professional support. Talk to people at church. But I would encourage you that no one is, I don't know what the word is, so stuck that they can't change. Because I've got two lines that I often say. One is, if you want change, you have to change. And the other is, what you focus on grows. And so if you want change, you have to change.
And I guess it always starts with you, because you hold the keys to how you're thinking about it, how you're approaching the situation, and what are your eventual behaviours. So to some degree, it's a great thing that you hold the keys to your change as well.
Definitely. And then we have to qualify that with when I'm feeling really quite down and depressed and I'm struggling with motivation, when I'm feeling paralysed by anxiety.
Yes.
And that's what we might call something that's a little bit more of a clinical concern.
Yeah.
And if I have those clinical concerns, then you need to get clinical support. And by that, I just mean talking to Linda.
How do we how do we work out when we need to maybe get extra support?
Can I answer that in a
Sure,
moment?
sure.
Because I really feel an important sort of thing to say about the senior group. And I hear you say, yes, we need to take stock of our own lives and dig deep and see what we can change. But I also believe that that with seniors, there is a responsibility in our community to reach out to seniors.
It's a good word.
They have a lot. A senior person has a lot to offer.
Yeah.
And I think they're often the forgotten, in Australia in particular.
Resource generations,
Yeah. They have a lot to offer, especially in their stories of their lives, a person's life. And that a young person or a middle-aged person or a younger person can benefit can learn a lot from an older person who's lived life.
Yeah, that's good.
And so I think be prepared to share your story as a senior, but the community needs to be prepared to listen and to engage.
Brilliant. I like what you're saying.
And in that sense, a senior person will also feel valued and heard. And all recent, studies show that the biggest killer, really, of older people is loneliness. And loneliness, in a recent study, a survey in Australia, in this COVID period, it's tripled in its experience of loneliness. But also, what's quadrupled is a sense of solidarity. And so, if we can capitalise on that the sense that people are reaching out to others, don't think you haven't got anything to offer. You've got a story. Tell the story, and a young person will hopefully listen, or an old, whatever, listen, because there's value in that. So
it's good.
I think one of the best examples I've seen of that is there's, I guess, a documentary series on the ABC called The Old Person's Home for 4-year-olds. And they take a bunch of 4-year-old children into a nursing home, or not a nursing home, or a sort of retirement village. And it's a sort of they've set it all up so it's healthy and helpful for everyone. They bring a range of different seniors in, different life stages, and to see the joy and life-giving hope they give to each other, like the young kids start riling them up, like, come on, you need to stand up, you need to walk, and tell me your story, but these older people can give so much hope and guidance and wisdom to it's just such a beautiful story that you just couldn't imagine has so much goodness coming out of it, and I think that just perfectly explains that, or is a good definition
It's
of that.
a great example. Yeah.
And we have to train our children in the way they should go. They should not depart from it. We have to train them. We just, some children will and young people will naturally gravitate to older people, but some don't.
Yeah.
And vice versa. The gap is widening. It feels like it's widening, but that's an age-old problem. That as the differences. But there is a common thread, and everyone loves a story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so tell your story.
How do we have empathy for different generations? And I guess it's the ones before us we maybe don't understand, but then sometimes when we're old and we're looking back, we don't understand the ones that are coming behind us. How do we have empathy for them?
What is empathy?
I guess it's the ability to listen and to see life from their eyes and perspective.
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's a bit think about the other person and their life. Again, it's other-centred. Empathy is other-centred.
Yeah.
And so if we are encouraging other-centred approaches, it will come naturally. It will come naturally, but sometimes there's a little bit of skill involved, which is understanding emotions and thinking about thinking. But the key to all of that is actively being able to listen and really to suspend your own thinking and stay in the present moment with that person in front of you. And that's actually an art.
Yeah.
It's a skill as well,
Yeah.
and it takes practice. It just takes practice. And so if anyone wanted to set themselves a goal over this period of time to say, I would like to be a better listener, and get no better time, because there's less distraction, and you can also limit your distractions more easily. So,
thoughts, Rob?
I mean, it's certainly something that we want to build in all of us. We want a community that is full of empathy, a community that notices the other, looks not only to our own interests but also the interests of others. That's who we want to be, but it doesn't come naturally. I think the people that are most emotionally healthy tend to be a little bit stronger at empathy. There's this picture I like often, when you get on a plane, they say, here are the exits. Put your own mask on before you help anyone else. And when we talk about stress, but also the community we want to build, I think the one message in that is, if I'm going okay, then I'm able to help others. But if I'm not going well, if I'm not looking after myself, if I don't have balance in my life, then I'm going to struggle to have empathy, because my needs, my goals are so pressing, I can't see past them to help you. And so part of developing empathy is a skill, but it's also actually getting me to the best place I can. So it's me finding joy. It's me having hobbies that I'm completely into. It's me connecting with people socially, having a sense of meaning and purpose, or even accomplishment. They're the kind of things that are important. It's me exercising and doing stuff that I like. It's me trying a new skill. That's how I build myself up. It's me when I come home and it's a hard time, still taking time out for myself, because it's important. And so it's still giving time to your partner or your kids or whoever's in your life, even though it's a bit tricky, because they need to look after themselves too. And I think that's the kind of community we want to be in, where we're all going mostly okay, where we're saying, yep, I'm doing all right and I can look after you. And there will be times when we will be down, and I'm going to struggle to notice your needs and interests. And so I need to look at myself before I can help others.
Yeah.
But given all of that, I think that's who we are as a Christian community. We are those that are others focused.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So as we draw this to a close, what are some key takeaways? Well, obviously we've discussed a lot today, and it's a great opportunity to rewind and watch things again and maybe take down some notes. But what are some of the key takeaways that people can have from this session?
Can I start?
Yeah.
One point.
Oh, have you?
I think for me, for what I really feel passionately about is to view stress and anxiety as, in a broader sense, as change, because changes help open up your thinking towards the possibilities of what this actually means, both the positive and the negative side of things. So I would just hope that people would look at themselves, look at what they're experiencing, and keep in mind that this too is a season that shall pass, but there is so much we can learn from this season, and what I'm prepared to learn if I keep my an open mind and an open perspective.
Mindset. Yeah, absolutely.
That's it.
Yeah, that's good. I think part of it is about perspective, and just because I feel like things are changing, not everything is changing.
Yeah.
I still like spicy food, and I've still got lovely people in my life. I still have my hobbies, and I still, I don't know, in a community that I want to be in. And so, yes, there may be things that have changed, but not everything has changed. So I don't have to feel like I've got no grounding. And sometimes when I'm feeling a bit groundless, it's important to hold on to those things that are still consistent. And so for us, and perhaps you listening out there, it is God. Because we do know there's one thing that doesn't change. It's his love for us. It's who he is and his character. And so if I'm feeling overwhelmed, then I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
Sort of trying to immerse myself and say, God, how do you see me? God, I know you have plans for me. The same power that raised Christ from the dead is at work within me. Having that kind of, talk about narrative, mindset. Yes. So part of it is where we come from and hooking onto those anchors. The other part is actually being purposeful about changing, moving from automatic to manual. Instead of, wow, this is tough, I don't know what to do, everyone is probably better than they think they are. That's the basic perspective that most of us come from. You've got more skills than you realise. When we sit in sessions with people, we don't tell them what to do. No. We ask questions and they hear themselves talk. They uncover their own situations. And I guess I would encourage people who are feeling stressed, who are feeling like the change is a little bit overwhelming, to break it off into small pieces. Tomorrow I'm going to do something that I'm going to enjoy. This week I'm going to spend 30 minutes Googling, I don't know, a new job or a new recipe. Actually having activities that are really quite specific. Breaking it down and not feeling like I'm just drifting along without an anchor. So part of it is having our anchor, part of it is being purposeful and having that perspective. These are my actions, I'm going to act on it. And I think the third part is being connected to people. So we've talked about isolation being a challenge. We've talked about we're doing things remotely. We still need to be connected because 70% is better than zero. 70% of a Zoom call is better than not connected at all. And so I need to stay connected to my GBC community. I need to stay connected to my friends and family. Things are slightly opening up, but it doesn't mean that everything's back to the way it used to be. So we need to be purposeful and accept the fact that what used to feed me and fill me up may no longer be there. And so I've got a couple of choices about that. I can change and find something new, or I can find it a little bit difficult and feel the stress and torment of that. And I guess I would just encourage people, if that first step to what you want to do is a bit too big, then you probably need help. If that first step is something that you can achieve, then you're on your way. Small steps, purposeful, and remain connected.
Fantastic. Well, Linda, Robert, thank you so much for sharing your experiences, your wealth of information, and also your perspectives on how we can do change well.
Thank you. It's been good fun.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks for being part of our Hopefield sessions. And if you found this content valuable, please share this session with your friends and family. We look forward to unpacking more topics in the future with you. And for further information, you can go to hopefield.org.au or connect with Hopefield's social media. And as you go out into your day, be on purpose to live well.